Alrighty. Hey everyone, I see everyone piling in. This is excellent. I hope that you can see me and hear me, and if that is the case, please let me know in the chat. Just say, hey, I can hear you, I can see you. Great, we got some feedback coming in. Thank you, appreciate that, excellent. We want a lot of viewer response and a lot of interaction today, so thank you guys so much. I'm glad that you are here, and we want to be respectful of your time, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. Thanks for waiting, thanks for standing by, and this is all about how to help your child become the best student. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, even if they can't learn, if they've got no motivation to act, if they spend a lot of time on their phone, or they procrastinate, or they don't believe in their own abilities. Now, look, I'm sure you've been to a lot of webinars, and some of them didn't really deliver on their promise, right? So right off the set, I just want to say I'm going to make sure that this one is different. And because I really value your time, let's go ahead and jump into it, okay? So in today's live webinar, as you can see, there's me. I'm Jamie. I'm going to be your host for the next 90 minutes or so. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and also the team behind us in just a moment. So today I'm also joined by Maria. She's going to be helping out run this webinar and answering your questions in the chat on the right side of your screen. So go ahead, drop in a quick hello, and let me know where you're coming in from today, okay? Maria is going to be responding to your messages throughout this webinar, and at the very end, during our Q&A, I'm going to personally answer the most common questions that people have. Also on the screen, you'll see a third face, and that is Mikolai Diblik. Now, he is the real guy. He is the person who built the effective action system in the first place. The method that I'm going to be talking and walking you through today. Now, he's not on the live call with us right now, but he is the reason that this webinar exists, and you'll hear a lot more about him in just a moment. For now, let me tell you something exciting. Now, the process I'm going to share with you, okay, was originally built in Poland by Mick himself. So over the past 5 years, Mick has helped over 3,000 students master effective action through his courses, his programs, and his one-on-one work. He's developed a 6-week system that helps teenagers take effective action once and for all. Teenagers who used to procrastinate all day now prepare in advance. Teenagers who spent 5+ hours a day on their phone now use it for 1 to 2 hours a day because they actually understand how it's affecting them. Teenagers who spend hours learning inefficiently can now get everything done in 1 to 2 hours and still have time for the things that they love. Teenagers who struggle to concentrate for more than 15 minutes, even those with ADHD, can now focus for at least an hour straight without any issues. And this has really helped thousands of teenagers, not just from Poland, but all over the world. And the process is actually very simple, and I'm going to be walking you through it step by step. Speaking of which, let me show you what past attendees have said about this webinar and what you can expect as well. Okay, as you can see here, we want to talk about Anne, who was one of our previous attendees, and she checked out the same webinar you're checking out today. She wrote, I attended today's webinar, and I have to say, it was an incredible experience. I've never come across your approach to education before, and it was only after today's webinar that everything finally started to make sense. Thank you. Well, we appreciate that, Anne. We also have Margaret, who wrote, Hi, I just wanted to thank you so much for the valuable knowledge, completely free of charge. My son watched with me until the very end and said it was the most interesting webinar he's ever attended. Now, guys, I am monitoring the chat here. Really, Maria is going to handle that, but I do see a few quick questions coming in here about how long the webinar is actually going to be, and I'm going to let you know we're looking at about 1.5 to 2 hours, okay? This is not going to be a quick 15-minute overview. We're going deep, all right? So let's talk about it. Who is this webinar for? Well, for every parent who wants to support their child, 12 plus, in their educational journey, even if they resist your involvement, okay? Also, for every parent who wants to help their child to operate effectively so that they can ... And this is where you fill in the blank yourself. So whether it's acing their key school exams, crushing their SATs, passing to the next grade, dropping tutoring for good, studying more effectively, finding more motivation, studying abroad, it honestly doesn't matter, because once your child knows how to take effective action, they will achieve any goal they set. Okay? So, this is also for parents who prefer to take an alternative approach to education, and instead of following the crowd, spending thousands on tutoring, stressing about grades, getting upset that their child is not listening to them, and so on, they prefer to choose something that will bring better results. So, my goal for this webinar is to show you the only way to help your child start taking effective action once and for all, okay? That is the entire goal that I want to present to you today, and I think I can live up to it. Okay, so what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to present to you and show you exactly why the approach 90% of parents take is not working, and what you can do that's different so that you can walk away from this webinar today with a clear action plan in your head. One you can start putting into practice today, right after this webinar ends. And you're also going to wonder why you're not only hearing about this now, but why nobody's ever talked about this before. And, I got to say that you've been doing things the old way, or still are, right? And that's completely fine. You most likely have no idea that there actually is another way. So, what are we going to cover today? Well, let's talk about that, why throwing money at tutors and test prep doesn't work long term, what separates the best students from the majority, how to help your child master effective action once and for all. This is a 5-step process. And finally, we're going to have a Q&A section at the end where we'll be answering your questions. So, if you stay with me until the end, you're going to get the entire presentation with over 150 slides that I've prepared so that you can revisit this material at your convenience. Sound like a deal? All right. Now, I must say that you must remember that there will be no replay of this webinar. Now, I've been through my fair share of webinars, and I've seen a huge difference when people actually focus on what I'm saying, close all their distractions, and treat this webinar as their priority. They get far better results, and they take up and take away so much more information. We intentionally do not offer webinar replays, so please make sure that you're actively participating, taking notes, staying until the very end for the slides, and you are asking questions in the chat. In fact, let's start right now. I want you to type "I'm in" the chat if you're committed to staying focused for the next 90 minutes. Type "I'm in." All right, I love it. I got a lot of "I'm ins" coming through, and we certainly do appreciate that. I'm glad that we're with a lot of go-getters today. All right, now before we dive in, a quick word about who I am, and more importantly, who's really behind what you're about to learn today. So my name is Jamie, and I'm going to be your host for the next 90 minutes. But let me say this much. I'm going to be upfront with you right away, okay? I'm not the expert here. I didn't build this system. I'm not the one who spent 5 years coaching thousands of teenagers. My role today is simple, guys, to bring the material to you in English clearly and in a way that you and your family can actually use, okay? The person behind everything you're about to learn is a guy named Mikolai Diblik. And before we get into his method, you need to understand who he is because this really matters. Now, Mick is the founder of an education company focused on one thing: teaching teenagers how to take effective action, how to study smarter, build real motivation, and take control of their own lives. Now, over the past 5 years, more than 3,000 students have gone through his structured programs. Over 25,000 parents have attended his training sessions, and his flagship program has a 4.93 out of 5 rating across 152 independent reviews. These are not paid testimonials, ladies and gentlemen. These are parents and teenagers whose lives genuinely changed. And here's what makes his background a little unusual. Mick is actually a software engineer by training. By the age of 20, he'd landed a role at one of the top tech companies in Europe, a firm called Intratech, with offices across Poland and Germany, while simultaneously studying full-time at university and coaching students on the side. Then, a few years in, he made a decision that surprised everyone around him. He walked away from his tech career entirely to work with teenagers full-time. Why? Because it genuinely bothered him that so many young people were wasting their potential and nobody was giving them the tools to change that. And here's the thing. The fundamentals he teaches are not country-specific. Effective action is effective action, whether your teenager is facing their first big exams in Chicago, struggling with homework in London, or trying to build a real study habit in Toronto. The psychology of motivation, the science of focus, the habits that actually build results, well, they are universal. Mick has already worked with English-speaking families around the world, parents reaching out from the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and the results have been just as strong because the method works on the human, not on the geography, if that makes sense. So you might be wondering, why am I the one delivering this today instead of Mick? Well, the honest answer is that Mick's English is actually pretty solid. Tech background, years working with international teams. He gets by just fine. But let's just say he's got a beautifully polished accent. All right? And after 2 hours of that, even the most patient listener starts getting a little tired. Mick specifically asked me to deliver this webinar because he wanted nothing, not even an accent, getting in the way of the actual content that is reaching you. Now, the way we work is simple. Mick creates, he builds the system, he refines the method, he works directly with students and continues to evolve the program based on what's actually getting results. So my role is to bring his work to English-speaking families in the clearest way possible. He's the architect, I'm the translator. That's a good way of looking at it. And I want to be clear about one thing because I know what some of you might be thinking. If Mick isn't on the call, is he really behind this? Well, the answer is absolutely yes. Every concept, every framework, every example you're going to hear today comes directly from him. He is the author of this system. He stands behind every family that joins it. And his team, coaches trained under his methodology, are the ones who work with students one-on-one when families enroll. So what you're getting today isn't a new, untested experiment. It's a proven system, refined over 5 years for thousands of students and families, already working for English-speaking families around the world, now available to you in its clearest form yet. Now, let me tell you how Mick got here in the first place, because his own story is really the reason any of this exists. Okay? Mick was not born with these skills. Back in school, he was a pretty average student, spent most of his time gaming and watching TV. He didn't like studying. He had zero motivation. His parents sent him to tutoring, thinking that's what would fix it. He genuinely believed that to enjoy learning, you had to be born with some kind of special talent. And he remembers studying for hours before a test and still getting a terrible grade, while classmates who did practically nothing walked out with the best ones. Now he knows exactly why that happens. Back then, he was convinced that this was just the way it was, right? And there was nothing that he could do about it. His parents told him to study, but he couldn't see the point. Why bother studying if I'm going to get a bad grade anyway, right? Why study subjects I'll never use in real life? And the years just kept passing. He was wasting his potential, and his parents felt completely helpless. Then, near the end of high school, something changed. His parents bought him a coding course, and the creator of that course happened to cover the fundamentals of effective action. Mick was skeptical at first. What's this going to do for me? But on his own time, without telling his parents because he was too embarrassed to admit they might be right, he started going through it. And look, here's what's really interesting. The coding wasn't even the most valuable thing he took away. It was the chapter on effective action that completely changed his mindset. He started planning his days properly. He realized the screen time wasn't serving him. He started seeing the point of learning, and for the first time, he developed real internal motivation. Just the basics were enough for him to finally take control of his life. So within a few months, he didn't need tutoring anymore. His parents no longer had to motivate him, plan his schedule, or limit his screen time. He prepared for his final exams on his own and got into the university he wanted. Word spread fast among people who knew him because they remembered him as the gaming-addicted kid who couldn't get off his computer. They started asking how he'd changed so dramatically. Their parents started reaching out too, asking if Mick could help their kids get similar results. And at first, he thought, no way this works for anyone else. But the requests kept coming in. So eventually he thought, fine, why not? Worst case, I'll prove them wrong. Turns out he was the one who was wrong. Everything that he had been doing and working on for other students worked as well. And that's how this entire system started. So let's take Michael, for example, one of the students Mick worked with directly. When they started, Michael was in his first year of high school on a biology and chemistry track, planning to go into medicine. But he couldn't get himself to take action. Most of the time, he went to gaming. All of the studying got pushed to the last minute, and he was exhausted and falling behind. Mick worked with him on mindset and motivation, built a proper study schedule spread across the week, and taught him the fundamentals of effective learning. The result? Well, within 5 weeks, Michael had developed internal drive. He was studying consistently, at least an hour a day. His grades improved dramatically, and most importantly, he finally felt like he actually understood the material and was in control of what was happening at school. So, why do we do what we do? Well, it genuinely bothers us to see so many students waste their potential and never hit their goals, while their parents feel helpless to do anything about it. And that's what drove Mick to walk away from tech years ago. And it really is the reason this system exists in English today. And even if today we only help one person, this webinar will have been worth it. So, if you're not fully engaged right now, or you're not ready to change anything in how your family approaches your child's education, this is the best time to leave and not waste your time. Because what you're about to learn will completely change how you see your child's education. You're going to start noticing how many people around you are still doing things the wrong way, making the same mistakes over and over. So, tell me, are you ready? Give me a ready in the chat if you're ready to progress. Great. Awesome. All right. I see responses coming into the chat. Yes. Yes. Maybe. Yes. Something has to change. Of course. Great. All right. So once again, let's go over this. What are we going to cover today? Why throwing money at tutors and test prep doesn't work long term. What separates the best students from the majority? How to help your child master effective action once and for all. This is a 5-step process. So let's get into it. Effective action. Now, before we go any further, I want to take a moment to actually define what effective action means. What is effective action? Because I've already mentioned it several times, and you're going to be hearing it a lot more. But I'm curious, type in the chat what you think effective action means. So just let me know. What is effective action to you? Okay. Okay. Got it. So I'm seeing some great answers here. Someone wrote, achieving goals efficiently, knowing how to do what needs to be done, effective studying, and a lot of you are mentioning consistency, not procrastinating, doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done. All right, great. Thanks for that. All right, good job, guys. Certainly appreciate your participation, and honestly, you're all right. So, effective action. I like to keep it very simple. Effective action is knowing how to plan, focus, and actually follow through every single day. And what's most important is that these skills stay with your child for life. So the sooner your child learns them, the easier every single stage of their life becomes. So looking at effective action more visually, we can break it down with these core areas: effective learning, time management, setting the right priorities, concentration, winning mindset, planning, effective goal achievement, and consistency. Each of these is a skill, not a talent. Nobody is born knowing how to manage their time or set priorities. These are things you learn, and when your child masters all of them together, that's when everything changes. So, let's go ahead and take a look at an example that shows what effective action means in the context of school. As you can see, it all starts at the bottom. Effective action is the foundation. Without it, nothing above it works. Effective learning is just one piece of effective action. It's not the whole thing. So let's go back. As you can see, effective learning right here, it just sits right here, right? It's one of the many skills that fall under the effective action umbrella. And most parents and tutors only focus on this one layer. We address the entire pyramid. That's what we do here, okay? So here is how it actually works from the bottom up. As you can see, when your child knows how to take effective action, how to plan, stay consistent, manage their time, and set priorities, only then can they actually learn effectively. And when they learn effectively, they start truly understanding the material, not just memorizing it the night before. And when they genuinely understand the material, good grades and strong exam results become the natural outcome. Not something that you have to fight for, but something that simply follows. And that's why starting at the top, which is what tutoring does, never works long term, right? You have to build from the base. All right, now that we've got a clear understanding of what effective action actually means, I think that we're ready to move into our first topic. And that is, here we go, why throwing money at tutors and test prep doesn't work long term, okay? There's a deeply ingrained belief out there about what tutoring and about that the fact that it's essential, right? We hear it from parents constantly. Every serious student needs a tutor for exams. Without tutoring, my child won't keep up. All the other kids in their class are getting extra help. We can't afford to fall behind. Now, let me know in the chat, have you heard any of these before? Or maybe something similar from parents at your school. Anything ring a bell? I'm seeing a lot of yeses, every parent meeting, all the time. And I see a few no's too, which honestly makes me happy because these beliefs aren't actually true. And honestly, I got to say, I hear this constantly, okay? Among friends, in my neighborhood, in conversations with other parents I know, tutoring has become the default, right? Something someone just assumes that you're going to do. I accepted it as normal for a very long time, too, before I started looking at what the research actually says. Now, when we dig deeper and ask parents why their child is in tutoring, the answer almost always falls into one of two categories. One, to get ahead, exam prep, college admissions, competitive advantage, right? And two, because they're falling behind. So we're either dealing with fear of missing out or a lack of effective action skills. Now, either way, regular tutoring is almost never the real solution, right? And this is just my opinion. Mick has researched this topic extensively, drawing on work by researchers like Dr. Justin Sung. And he has even published an article in Poland on this subject himself. The research consistently points to the same conclusion, and actually, let me show you exactly what I mean. So if you take a look at the purple line here, as you can see, students who received tutoring in high school actually had higher grades than students who didn't. So on the surface, it looks like tutoring works, right? But here's where it gets really interesting, guys. If we compare their actual skills and competencies, that's the green and blue lines here, to students who didn't have tutoring, we can see very clearly that their real abilities were actually worse. So let that sink in for a second. Higher grades, worse actual skills. Yeah. Now, back to this purple line here, because there's a fascinating phenomenon happening here. And those students who had better grades in high school, thanks to tutoring, well, watch what happens when they get to college. A massive drop. They hit reality. Tutoring is no longer there to carry them on, right? And their effective action skills, the ones they never build, are practically non-existent. And that's because tutoring doesn't change the underlying state. And what do I mean by that? Well, think about it. When your child has a tutor, the pattern looks something like this. The tutor provides the materials, provides the support, and tells your child whether they're on the right track. That leads to more knowledge, which leads to better grades. And that makes sense, right? But now let's ask ourselves, what happens when we take the tutor away? No more materials, no more support, no one telling them whether they're going in the right direction. And suddenly, they can't acquire knowledge on their own, and their grades drop. They're right back where they started. The tutoring didn't change their starting state. It was a crutch. And the moment you remove that crutch, they fall. Okay? So here's what I want you to take away from all of this. Every time you're about to sign your child up for extra help, tutoring, test prep, whatever it is, ask yourself this question: will this change my child's underlying state or not? Meaning, what would happen if after 2 months my child stopped going? Would anything actually be different about how they operate? What would they have actually learned? And would they be able to use what they learned independently long after the sessions are over? Ladies and gentlemen, if the answer is no, you're paying for a temporary fix, not a permanent solution. Which is why, coming back to our main point, it's so much better to focus on building the skills that make tutoring unnecessary for good. Let me give you one more example that's going to make this crystal clear, okay? So, imagine you are building a house, and the foundation of that house, that's the effective action skills, right? If the house has a solid foundation, it stands strong no matter what happens around it. If a student knows how to take effective action, they move forward regardless of what goal they're currently working towards. Now, think about what tutoring actually is in this analogy. Tutoring is like putting up a temporary support against the walls of a house that has no foundation. Sure, they might keep the structure standing for now, but once the strong wind comes, the whole thing breaks. It's the same with students. Tutoring can help them pass a test or scrape through an exam, right? But it doesn't fix the root problem, the lack of effective action skills and the inability to learn independently. So without a solid foundation, those temporary supports stop being enough, and the student loses the ground beneath their feet the moment they face a real challenge, whether that's college, their first job, or just life in general, right? So let's answer one more important question. When can tutoring actually be useful? Because I'm not here to tell you that tutoring is always bad. There are two specific cases where it does make sense. First, when your child has massive gaps because they've been absent for a long time, the semester is ending, and they need to pass the next grade to get into that. So in that situation, tutoring can be genuinely, really a really positive thing and really your only lifeline, right? But, and this is critical, once the crisis is over, the focus has to shift immediately to building effective action skills so that situation never happens again. Let's talk about number two. This is when your child already knows how to operate effectively on their own, but they need to score at the very top of their exams to get into a highly competitive university program. Now, in that case, yes, working with someone who has deep experience preparing students for those specific exams can absolutely help and save a lot of time. But notice what I said. The student should already be operating effectively on their own. They should already have zero problems managing their own learning. So if those independent learning skills aren't there, tutoring won't fix that problem. It'll just sweep it under the rug for a while. Now, I hope these examples have made the tutoring picture crystal clear for you. Let me know in the chat, guys, does this make sense to you? And I'm going to grab a little more water and see what we got coming in here. Okay, I'm seeing a message from Sarah in the chat. She wrote, I'm just now realizing we've been making this mistake the whole time. Yeah. Why am I only learning about this now? I feel like such a failure as a parent. Sarah, first of all, don't be so hard on yourself, please. Remember, we always make the best decisions that we can with the information that we have at the time, right? I mean, before today, tutoring probably seemed like the best option because you didn't know there was another way. Now you do, so now you can make a different choice. And in point 3, I'm going to walk you through exactly how you, as a parent, can help your child start taking effective action. So stay with us until the end, once again, because there's still a lot of you that are going to take away a lot more today. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to point number 2. What separates the best students from the majority? Now, before we dive into this section, guys, I want to start with something important. If you do what 90% of people do, you're going to get the same results as the 90% of those people, right? So if you truly want to help your child become a top student, you're going to have to open up your mind to a completely new approach. And you're going to need to stop doing what everyone around you is doing. Most likely, you're going to need to change some of your own habits too. So make sure that you're taking copious notes right now, because what I'm about to share with you is really, really important. So what actually sets top students apart from the rest? Well, first, a clear action plan. They know what they want. They know what they're working toward. They have a clear goal. They understand why they're doing what they're doing, and every single day they take a closer step to that goal. Second is a proven system for getting things done. Top students don't rely on external motivation. They take action when they don't feel like it, even on a bad day. They know perfectly well that sitting in front of a screen all day isn't moving them closer to their goals. But here's the key. These students arrived at these locations, at these conclusions, on their own. Nobody forced it on them. And that is really cool. Third, high self-confidence. These students don't even consider the possibility of failure, right? They're eager to step outside their comfort zone and take on new challenges. And fourth, effective learning skills. Instead of sitting over textbooks for hours, pulling all-nighters, or relying heavily on tutoring, they've developed the ability to learn independently and efficiently. And number 5, balance in every aspect of life. Sports, nutrition, sleep, rest, hobbies, school. All of it, guys. They're not grinding themselves into the ground. They're performing at a high level precisely because their life is balanced. Now, look at this list and be really honest with yourself. How many of these does your child actually have right now? Not 1 or 2, all 5. And really, the truth is, if even one of these areas is weak in your child, they will struggle to reach their full potential, no matter how hard they try. But when all 5 of these areas come together, that's when something remarkable happens. And let me show you exactly what I mean. Now, to really bring this into life, and let me go ahead and walk you through a real example here so that you understand. This is the story of Victor, one of our students in Poland. And Victor's goal was to get accepted into one of the most competitive medical programs in the country on his first attempt. Now, Victor scored 96% in mathematics, 93% in biology, 89% in chemistry, and 100% in English on his final exams. And of course, he got accepted exactly where he wanted. Now, here's where it's interesting. He didn't have hours of tutoring every week. He wasn't studying 8+ hours a day. He wasn't buried in textbooks from morning to night. He didn't have straight A's throughout high school. And he wasn't naturally talented or gifted. What did Victor have? Well, what he had was a pretty normal, healthy lifestyle. He hung out with his friends. He had time for his passions. He slept 8 hours every night. He ate well. He exercised. In other words, Victor wasn't like superhuman, right? He was a normal teenager who learned how to operate effectively, and that's it. Now, what set Victor apart from most students was this. He had all 5 areas dialed in. He had a clear action plan. Victor knew exactly what his goal was and what he was working toward. He knew what it would take to get there, and he worked toward it systematically every single day. He had a proven system for getting things done. Victor built a habit of consistent action. Every day, whether he felt like it or not, he simply worked through what needed to be done to prepare for his exams, right? And here's the thing about habits. Once it was locked in, it was actually harder for him not to study than to study. It was on complete autopilot. He had high self-confidence. He believed in himself so deeply that even though he had a backup plan, he never entertained the thought that he wouldn't reach his goal. So in his mind, getting into medical school wasn't a possibility, it was an inevitability. So he had effective learning skills. Instead of sitting over textbooks for 8+ hours a day, he was able to get things done, what needed to get done, efficiently, and still have time for everything else. And he maintained balance in every aspect of his life. He exercised regularly. He ate well. He made time for rest. He slept the right amount, very important. And he successfully combined his responsibilities with the things he enjoyed. Now, today, Victor is one of the top students at his medical school. He travels the world and lives a life that's envied by all those people who are either pulling all-nighters over textbooks or can't get themselves to take any action at all. And Victor isn't the only example that proves this point. Let's talk about Greg, another one of our students. He wrote this after working with us. In the past, I've always studied at the last minute because I didn't see the point of studying regularly. I just didn't feel like it. I'd either game all day or when there was finally no other option, I'd cram all day. But after working with Mick, I started studying regularly. And after a few weeks, it became a habit. Now I always study for an hour after school, and then I have time for other things. Interestingly, I don't even feel like gaming all day anymore because I see how negatively it was affecting me. I also started getting much better grades, and I feel just a whole lot better overall. Thank you. And now let's move to the third point, probably the one that you've been waiting for the most, namely, how to help your child master effective action once and for all. Now, this really comes down to putting everything that we've talked about into practice. So first, stop treating the symptoms. What do I mean by that? Well, if your child is currently getting any form of tutoring or extra help, and as long as they don't have massive gaps from a long absence or a critical exam right around the corner that requires top scores, it's time to let it go. Because tutoring, test prep, cramming apps, well, these are all symptom treatments. They mask the problem. They don't cure it. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. In the beginning, it will be uncomfortable. Grades might dip, frustration might creep in, but this is necessary because you cannot learn to operate independently while someone is still holding your hand. There's just no shortcut around this. And second, it's time to install the system that top students run on. Let's walk you through each element one by one, all right? Number one is a clear action plan. First, we need a clear action plan. If a student doesn't know why they're studying, they're going to go about it reluctantly. That's just human nature, right? So it's absolutely essential to help them find purpose in what they're doing. Show them what's ahead. Show them where their efforts are actually leading. Because if you're saying study so you can get good grades, your child is sitting there thinking, and why do I need to get good grades? Grades don't even matter. And this mindset is incredibly common. We see it come up again and again with students. But the moment a student knows why they need to study, for example, to earn a scholarship, to get into their dream university program, to study abroad, or simply to feel that internal sense of accomplishment is there, it becomes so much easier for them to take consistent action. Now, to help a student define that purpose, and this is important, guys, they need to arrive at it themselves, not be told what to care about, right? So we use a document called Best Self, and we always share this with our students at the very beginning of our work together. This document is pretty in-depth, and I can see that we're going to be starting to run a bit short on time here, so I probably won't be able to walk you through the whole thing, okay? Actually, you know what? What I'm going to do is let me at least show you the concept where I can give you a little bit of value as much as possible today. So check this out. The goal of this exercise is actually rather simple. Your child defines two versions of themselves, who they are right now and who they want to become. And then they build a plan to get from here to there. And they do it by answering a series of carefully designed questions. Things like, okay, how would you describe yourself in 3 sentences? What does your typical day look like? How do you approach personal growth? In the basic version, there are 15 of these questions. In the extended version, there's about 50. And that's just on your current self, right? When you answer a similar set of questions about your best self, oh, well, this gets really good, right? Because you have both versions side by side. You create an action plan to get from where you are now to where you want to be. And the whole exercise takes a few good hours, and students often need quite a bit of time to work through it. Excuse me. It turns out that very few people have ever thought about their future in this way. But afterwards, the results are genuinely remarkable, and students finally start seeing the purpose behind what they are doing. All right, guys, I'm just scanning the chat here, and I see a few questions coming in. Where can I find this document? What are the questions? And so on. Okay, this document is something that we give to our students at the beginning of our work together. It's not publicly available. All right. Love the comments. I tell you what, let's go ahead and do this, okay? I can see a lot of you really want access to this document. So I'll tell you what, guys, at the end of this webinar, I'm going to go ahead and find the link, and I'm going to drop it in the chat for you. But I don't want to get too distracted from the main topic right now. So let's make sure that you stay with us until the very end, and I'm going to send you the link to the document at the close of the webinar. Deal? And I'm pretty sure Mick won't mind about this as well. All right. Let's go ahead and keep this moving. So, ladies and gentlemen, next up is number 2, a proven system for getting things done. And a lot of students, okay, make the mistake of relying on external motivation, things like grades, rewards, praise from parents, approval from friends. But look, here is the thing about motivation. It's constantly changing, right? One day it's high, the next day it's gone, so it's absolutely critical to stop relying on motivation. And the secret to breaking free from motivation dependency, that is building a habit. So, let me give you an example everyone can relate to: brushing your teeth. When you wake up in the morning, you don't stand there debating whether you feel like brushing your teeth. You don't try to convince yourself that skipping one day won't matter. You don't tell yourself, maybe I'll do it in 3 hours. Let me do something else first. You just walk to the bathroom, brush your teeth, regardless of how you feel, because it's completely natural to you. It's just what you do after waking up. And studying can work the same exact way. So, guys, imagine this for a second. Your child gets home from school, puts their bag down, and just sits down to study. No fight, no hagging from you, right? No nagging, saying, hey, do your work. No motivation required. Just something they do the way they brush their teeth. 30 minutes, done, the rest of the day is theirs. Look, that's not fantasy. That's what happens when the right habit is built the right way. But, and this is important, the activity has to be achievable. If a student has never studied regularly, suddenly sets a goal of studying 3 hours a day, well, they'll most likely quit after a few days because that jump is just too big. But if they approach it sensibly, start small, stay consistent, within a few weeks, studying becomes a habit. And at that point, it's easier to study than not to study. And once again, it's essential that the student arrives at this conclusion on their own, that this is beneficial for them. You can't force this on them. If you try to impose, it just won't work. Trust me on that. So, guys, let me know in the chat if this makes sense. And we're going to keep moving. Great. Glad to hear it. All right, excellent. We are moving right along, and next up is number 3, high self-confidence. Unfortunately, a huge number of students today struggle with self-esteem and self-acceptance. They don't believe in their own abilities. They feel like they can't do anything right. And sadly, the research does back this up. So let me show you some data that stopped me in my tracks. Now, this is from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the leading public health authority in the U.S. And their Youth Risk Behavior Survey studied over 20,000 high school students in 2023. So these high school students, here's what they found. 4 in 10 students, that's 40%, reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. 2 in 10, about 20%, seriously considered attempting suicide, and nearly 1 in 10 actually attempted it. Let that sink in. This is not some small study. This is 20,000 students, nationally representative, conducted by the U.S. government, and this isn't just an American problem. Research from the NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research, found evidence of declining youth well-being across 167 countries. This is a global crisis. Yes, guys, these numbers shocked me too, but don't lose hope because there is a way out. And actually, the same CDC study found something incredibly encouraging. The students who had certain protective factors like getting 8 or more hours of sleep, being physically active, having strong parental support, and feeling connected had significantly lower rates of depression. Does that sound familiar? These are exactly the principles that we've been talking about today. So, what can you do as a parent to build your child's self-confidence? Well, first, and I need to be really clear about this, and I want you to really hear this, okay? Support your child. When they come home with a bad grade or make a mistake, before you react in frustration or disappointment, just pause. Ask yourself, what will reacting this way actually achieve? What's my goal here? How will my behavior affect my child? Instead of projecting your negative emotions onto them, hug them. Tell them you love them. Tell them you are proud of them. Tell them you're grateful to have such a wonderful son or daughter. See, these moments may seem small and insignificant, but they can be the turning point where a child starts to believe in themselves, where they feel they can be authentic instead of playing the role they think you expect from them. They start feeling more confident. They're more willing to step outside their comfort zone. They know they have your support. So after working with hundreds and hundreds of students, we can see very clearly that a significant portion of their problems would be resolved if they simply had more support from their parents. Even if it feels like your words aren't making a difference, you are programming your child's subconscious. And one day, they will realize what you did for them, and they'll thank you. Now, number 2 is to stop comparing them to others. Phrases like, well, if Jake got an A, why did you get a C? Or the neighbor's daughter won her swim meet, but you're still sitting in front of your computer. These kinds of comparisons destroy a child's self-confidence. They start seeing themselves as worthless. And third, praise the effort, not the result. The renowned psychologist Carol Dweck has written extensively about this, and it's genuinely one of the most important things that you can do as a parent. So, instead of saying, great job, you got an A, you're so smart, say, I can see how hard you prepared for that test. Your hard work really paid off. When your child comes home with a good grade, instead of focusing only on the score, try saying it's clear you put in a whole lot of effort and really committed to this. Your hard work led to a great result. This approach helps your child understand that effort and the process of learning matter more than the grade actually itself. It builds the belief that success comes from their actions, not from some talent they were or were not born with. Now let's move on to number 4, effective learning. And most students study like this, right? They read the textbook, copy out the key points, and try to memorize everything without ever actively processing the information. And honestly, it's not their fault. Schools don't teach students how to learn effectively, so it's no surprise that most of them have no idea how to actually do it. So what I want you to remember is that effective learning really comes down to 3 things: spaced repetition, interleaving, and active recall. And I'm going to walk you through each one of these briefly. Make sure that you take notes on this because nobody teaches this anywhere. So let's start with number 1, spaced repetition. And this is about fighting what's called the forgetting curve, okay? This is what really happens to everyone. And if you take a look at this, you'll see within about an hour, you've already forgotten about 50% of new information. After 24 hours, nearly 80%. I mean, this is just crazy. So, in order to actually retain what you've learned, you need to review it. When you do a review, you reset back to 100% here, okay? And yes, your knowledge will start fading again, but here's what's powerful. With each review, it fades slower and slower. So the sweet spot is 4 reviews total. The first one, the same evening. The second one, midweek. The third at the end of the week. And the fourth at the end of the month or the day before the test, whichever comes first. So think about that for a second. 4 reviews. That's all it takes to move information from short-term to long-term memory, and yet almost no student does this because nobody ever showed them how. Second, interleaving. And this means mixing up different techniques so your brain can process new information so that you can get that information more deeply. So instead of passively reading a textbook and copying notes, which is what 90% of students do, it's far more effective to use techniques like the Feynman technique, creating flashcards, teaching an imaginary person, building mind maps, or writing your own practice questions, working through past exams, or studying with someone else through discussion. Now, ideally, each review session should use a different technique than the last one. This way, you don't just memorize the material, but you actually understand it, right? And number 3, active recall. So here's the problem. What's the point of learning everything if you sit down at the exam and you can't remember any of it? That's why it's absolutely essential to train your memory by always trying to recall information before looking at your notes or textbook. In practice, this means that every time you sit down for a review, you start by writing down everything you can remember from memory. And then you'll be able to process what you recalled using one of the techniques I just mentioned. So this way, you're training your brain and testing yourself under exam-like conditions every single time you study, not just when the test is tomorrow. Oh, and one more critical point that we want to mention about recall, and that is this connects back to what we talked about earlier. In order to effectively recall what you've learned, you need quality sleep. Yeah. Enough. Without proper sleep, your brain simply cannot consolidate information. All that studying, it gets lost. This is why balance isn't just a nice to have, it's a non-negotiable part of this system. So, a huge percentage of teenagers don't get nearly enough sleep, and the data makes this painfully clear. Teenagers should aim for 8 to 10 hours of sleep, yet 73% of them only get between 6.5 to 7.5 hours. So look at these numbers. 73% of teenagers sleep insufficiently. This just is not about feeling tired. This directly affects your child's ability to learn. So it's absolutely critical that your child gets a proper night's sleep, especially the night before a test, because sleep is when the brain encodes and connects everything they studied. Without it, all that effort is basically essentially wasted. So, let's go ahead and explain why sleep matters so much. This connects something called REM sleep, rapid eye movement, and the understanding of this is going to change how you think about your child's study forever. So, your sleep happens in cycles, and each cycle has different phases. There is light sleep, where your body relaxes. There is deep sleep, where your body physically recovers, and then there's REM sleep, right? And this is where really the magic happens for learning. See, during REM, your brain takes all the individual pieces of information your child studied that day, imagine a bunch of scattered, disconnected dots in their head, and it starts connecting them, building relationships between concepts, turning random facts into actual understanding. And without enough REM sleep, your child's brain is left with just the scattered dots. They studied, but nothing stuck. And here's the problem, guys. REM sleep happens predominantly in the later hours of sleep. So if your child sleeps 5 to 6 hours instead of 8, they're not using that couple of hours of sleep, right? Because they're losing it. And they're cutting off the exact phase where all that learning gets locked in. So when a teenager stays up until 1 a.m. cramming, then wakes up at 6 a.m. for school, they haven't just lost sleep, they've lost most of their REM cycles, which means they've essentially undone a huge portion of everything they just studied. This is why sleep isn't a nice to have, it's where learning actually begins. Now, let's move on to number 5, balance in every aspect of life. I hope everyone on this webinar today understands that school is not just about studying. Studying all day, every day, does not lead to great results, okay? It leads to burnout. Top students know this, and that's why they study a healthy number of hours each day. And then they have other things they do. They exercise, they rest, they have hobbies, and above all, enough sleep. But here's the key. Balance doesn't come from trying to balance. It comes naturally when the other 4 points are in place. So when your child has a clear plan, a system for taking action, genuine self-confidence, and effective learning skills, balance is the result, not something you have to force. So, ladies and gentlemen, picture this for a moment. Your teenager, 6 months from now, okay? They're studying an hour a day consistently without you asking. Their grades are up. But more than that, they actually understand what they're learning. They're sleeping 8 hours a night. They have time for the gym, for friends, for whatever they love. They're confident. They're planning their own future. And you? well, you're no longer the one nagging about homework, monitoring screen time, or stressing about grades. You're just their parent again, right? Watching them grow into someone who's got their life together. And that's what happens when all 5 pieces click. And that's completely achievable. Woo! All right. So, guys, we have covered a lot of information here. I want to make sure that you stick with me for just a little longer because, as promised, at the end, we're going to give you access to all the slides, plus I'm going to drop that link to the best self-document that I mentioned earlier in the chat. So I want to just say, stick with me, okay? All right, so let's go through and discover once again and kind of repeat about what we did in fact discuss today. So, one, we established that tutoring is not the solution, right? Because most of the time, it just sweeps the problem under the rug without developing any real effective action skills. Think of it this way, guys. Imagine you have a headache every single day, and every day you took a pill to make the pain go away. But every morning it comes back. Tutoring is the pill. It temporarily numbs the pain. But effective action skills, well, they eliminate the root cause of that headache, right? So that you never need the pill again. Number 2, we broke down what separates top students from everyone else. And it comes down to 5 things. A clear action plan, a proven system for getting things done, high self-confidence, effective learning skills, and balance in every aspect of life. 3, and we went deep on this one, but we walked through exactly what you can do to help your child master effective action once and for all. Okay? That's what we discovered. Hopefully you got a lot out of that. Now I've got a question for you. Are you able to do this? Do you think that you can pull your child out of tutoring and instead help them operate the way top students do? Help them build a clear action plan, a proven system for taking consistent action, genuine self-confidence, effective learning skills, and balance across every area of their life. Think about this. If your child actually implemented these changes and operated this way every single day, wouldn't they be able to achieve any goal that they set? Live a healthy lifestyle, break free from the phone, study consistently, effectively, and actually enjoy it. Crush their exams. Let me know in the chat. Just a quick yes. And as I mentioned earlier, I can still see all your messages and questions coming in. We're going to get to the questions at the end during the Q&A section. Okay? Here's the thing, though, and this is really important to understand, guys, and thank you for your comments. A lot of students manage to study effectively, but their self-confidence is shattered. So they really never reach their full potential, is what I'm trying to say. Some students get great grades, right? But, they're propped up by tutoring and their life is completely out of balance. And some students know exactly what they're working toward, but they can't take consistent action and they keep putting everything off until tomorrow. And some students have a perfectly healthy, balanced lifestyle, but they have no idea how to study and they're drowning at school. So, what good is being great at one of these if all the others are falling apart? And I thank you once again for all your yeses coming in the chat. I'm really glad you're engaged and here with us. This is really great. So, guys, I want to ask you a question, and I want to see if you're feeling a little bit like this right now, right? Maybe a little overwhelmed. I mean, we really have covered a lot today. It took Mick over 6 years to learn all of this and finally start operating truly effectively. So if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by everything, I completely understand, okay? I'm seeing yes, actually quite a lot. Yes, very overwhelmed. So much valuable information. Thank you, Jamie. Oh, great. I really appreciate that. But of course, on just one webinar, there's only so deep that we can go on each topic, right? So I actually see a message here from Monica. She wrote, this all sounds amazing, but I'm worried my son won't listen to me anyway because I'm his mom. Well, that's a great point, Monica. And honestly, what you're describing is incredibly common. From the thousands of teenagers that have gone through mixed programs, we see this pattern over and over again. It's a parent that tells their child something and the child completely ignores it on principle. But then someone else, a coach, a teacher, even a random stranger says the exact same thing in slightly different words, and suddenly it all clicks. And this is actually a well-documented phenomenon called psychological reactance. And it doesn't happen with every teenager. It depends on the individual, but it absolutely is something to be aware of. And in that situation, there are two options. So option number one would be give your child time. Share what you've learned, show them the tools, but don't push, right? They need to arrive at the conclusion themselves that what you're sharing is valuable and will actually help them. But honestly, that process can take years. And most of the time, you don't have years to wait, right? Option two, you get help from someone else. Because of psychological reactance, students almost always respond better to guidance from someone who isn't their parent. So, let me ask you this. Would it be okay with you if I took about 10, maybe 15 minutes to walk you through something special that I've put together specifically for the parents on this webinar today to help your child master effective action once and for all? I don't have to go through it if you don't want me to, but if you give me the green light and let me know, I'd love to walk you through it, and we'll see if it could help your situation. And right after, I'm going to go ahead and move into Q&A where I'm going to answer all your questions, all right? Okay. I see some positive reactions coming in. I'm seeing a lot of yes, yes, please, absolutely. All right, guys, let's do this. Here we go. So I want to introduce you to the Effective Action System 2.0, okay? So what is this? Well, this is the first system designed specifically for teenagers that don't focus on fixing individual problems, but it focuses on prevention, on preparing your child not just for the challenges that they're facing in school right now, but for everything that comes after, because effective action skills go far beyond high school, far beyond college. These, in fact, are life skills. The system is accessible anytime from anywhere in the world. You get lifetime access, including all future updates. So, guys, this is a 6-week system that covers everything your child needs to become a top student without relying on tutoring or extra help, without feeling overwhelmed, and without having to constantly monitor, nag, or supervise them. Now, the version you're seeing today is version 2.0, and that number matters. Version 1.0 was built and tested with over 1,000 teenagers in Poland over multiple years. And every piece of feedback, every struggle a student hit, every breakthrough a parent reported, all of it went back into the system. Version 2.0 is what came out on the other side. It's more refined, it's more engaging, it's rebuilt specifically for today's generation. Teenagers who grew up with phones in their hands, who have shorter attention spans than any generation before them, and who need fundamentally different tools than the ones their parents had. And before we open this up to families joining us today, version 2.0 has already been in the hands of English-speaking students and families in the US, in the UK, Canada, and beyond. The feedback that we've been getting back confirms exactly what we saw in Poland, and that is the method works on the human, not on the geography. Same struggles, same breakthroughs, same results. So guys, this is not beta. This isn't a translated experiment. This is the most refined version of a system that's already changed thousands of lives, and it's ready for your family. So, specifically, here's what your child will walk away with after going through the system. How to organize themselves, manage their time, and set the right priorities so you never have to do it for them again. How to take control from their phone without you taking it away. How to take consistent action with ease without relying on motivation or willpower. How to study effectively, spending just 60 minutes a day instead of hours cramming, getting top grades while actually understanding the material, and how to build genuine self-confidence and start believing in their own abilities again so they're eager to step outside their comfort zone and take on new challenges. So who is this program for? Well, any student aged 12 plus, middle school, high school, college, public, private, or homeschool. The system works regardless of where or how your child learns. Any parent who is done with temporary fixes and ready to help their child become truly independent. So, over the past several years, across thousands of families, Mick and his team have worked with that we've identified the most common struggles that teenagers face today. So, we're talking about lack of motivation, no vision for the future, phone addiction, last-minute cramming, sleep problems, struggling with math and science, low self-confidence, ineffective study habits, and overwhelm. So if you recognized your child in any of those, this system was built for them, because every single one of these problems is addressed directly, systematically, and week by week. So let me show you exactly how all of this works, okay? Before your child even starts week 1, they go through a short onboarding. We call it week 0, and this is where they get familiar with the platform, learn how to actually get the most out of the system, and receive access to all the additional tools they'll be using throughout the program. So by the time week 1 begins, they're going to be fully set up, know exactly what's coming, and ready to go. So think of this as the runway before takeoff, short, essential, and it makes everything smoother. So, week 1, this is awareness and environment. This is the week that your child finally gets clarity on who they are, where they're going, and why any of this matters. Because here's one of the biggest reasons teenagers don't take action. They genuinely don't see the point. They can't connect today's homework to anything meaningful about their future. So, week 1, we fix that at the root. Your child completes the best self document, the one that I showed you earlier, and for many of them, this is the first time they're ever seriously thought about, who they want to become. And we address the single biggest productivity killer of this generation, their phone. Not by taking it away, but by teaching them to see for themselves how much it's costing them. Once they see it, the behavior changes. And that's just part of week 1. We also cover workspace design, the domination plan for mapping their week, and the mindset shift that underpins everything else. By the end of the week, your child has a vision, a plan, and a workspace actually designed for focus. And here's what students are saying after week 1. The best self-exercise helped me realize what I actually want to do with my future. The domination plan is probably the best time management tool I've ever used. Thank you. After applying your advice on optimizing my phone and computer, I found that I didn't even feel like using them as much anymore. I finally started getting enough sleep, and I have time for other things. So thank you to Polly, Julia, and Matt for those comments. And let's move on to week number 2, Foundations of Effective Action. Now, this is the week your child stops relying on motivation and starts building a system that runs on autopilot, because motivation is a lie. It comes and goes. Top students don't rely on it. They build habits, right? And that's exactly what week 2 does. We tackle procrastination head on, not just understanding why it happens, but actually beating it. And here's a piece most parents have never heard of. We identify your child's chronotype, meaning we figure out exactly when their brain is at peak focus during the day and when they should be resting. See, most teenagers study at the worst possible times for their biology and wonder why nothing sticks. Week 2 fixes that, and as a bonus, it usually fixes their sleep too. All right, so that's week 2 at the surface. It also covers prioritization frameworks, focus building techniques, and something we call the power map. After this week, your child takes consistent action on their own, whether they feel like it or not. And let me go ahead and show you exactly what our students wrote after just week 2. Thanks to the Kolb cycle, I found the root cause of my lack of motivation. In one afternoon, I fixed something that had been holding me back for months. That is from Tony. Also, when I found out I'm a lion chronotype, I was genuinely shocked. I'd always studied after 8 p.m. and just assumed I wasn't good at learning, that it was supposed to feel this hard. But all it took was waking up an hour earlier and studying before school, and my problems with learning completely disappeared. Now I come home at 5 p.m., do 20 minutes of review, and I'm basically free for the rest of the day. I study less, I feel so much better, and my grades actually went up. That is from Amelia, who is 16. Here's another one. Since my son started implementing the exercises from the first 2 weeks of the system, he's finally stopped cramming at the last minute. He can put together his own action plan, and I can see he feels so much better about himself. I wanted to thank you right away, and honestly, I'm almost afraid to imagine how much more will change by the time he finishes the whole thing. That is from Monica, a mother of Jasper, who is 15. So that is really awesome. That was just from the first 2 weeks, right? And already at that point, parents are seeing real measurable changes in their child's behavior. Let's keep going. We're talking about week 3 now, and this is the introduction to effective learning. This is where your child starts studying smarter, not harder. And so what we do is we take the 3 core elements that I walked you through earlier: spaced repetition, active recall, and interleaving, and your child learns to apply them daily, not as theory, but as routine. And here's where we address something parents worry about constantly: AI. Your child is already using it. The question is, are they letting it do their thinking for them, or are they using it to strategically accelerate their learning? So we teach them the difference, because AI isn't going away, and students who learn to use it well will leave the ones who don't far behind. And here's more on week 3, how to schedule review sessions, how to plan effectively using AI, and the science of what sleep does to freshly learned information. After this week alone, your child is studying more effectively than 80% of their peers. Week 4 is all about total organization, and this is where we make sure every tool is in place and where we address something most parents underestimate. Your child learns how to actually learn during class, not just sit through it. Most students treat class as something to survive. But after week 4, your child is going to walk out of every lesson already halfway through studying the material. They learn how to prepare for tests and exams without panic, how to take notes that are useful later, and how to take real breaks so they don't burn out. Plus, how to use flashcards effectively, a pre-study routine that puts your child in focus mode before they even open a book, and how to sequence different subjects during a study session for maximum retention. And ladies and gentlemen, as a bonus, a full guide on managing stress is included as well. So this is a guest lesson from an educator who specializes in teen mental health, because we've all seen the data. Teenagers today are struggling, and your child deserves tools to handle that, not just academically, but emotionally. If your child is one of the ones quietly overwhelmed, this week is going to be for them. So what are others saying? Well, I finally learned how to actually learn during class. After just 1 week of practice, I feel like I remember literally everything that was covered. Also, thanks to your exam techniques, I started scoring 4s and 5s, Bs and As, where before a 2, a D, was a good grade because I always ran out of time. When you know what to pay attention to, everything becomes so much easier. Thank you. All right, that is incredible. So week number 5 is going to be Effective Learning 2.0, and this is where we take it to the next level and where we tackle the subjects parents worry about most: math, physics, chemistry. We show your child how to actually think through STEM subjects. So how to approach problems, build real understanding, and stop just memorizing formulas, hoping for the best. For a lot of students, this week alone is worth the entire system. We also dive into flow state, what it actually is, how your child learns to access it on demand, because when you're in flow, 1 hour of focused work is worth 3 hours of unfocused studying. So after this week, your child has everything they need to prepare for any exam at the highest level. College becomes dramatically easier, and there's no more last-minute cramming, no more I don't know how to study, no more my teacher doesn't explain things well. Because this week also covers inquiry-based learning, mind maps, and a technique we call a month in a day, how to catch up on massive amounts of material in a single focused session. For students who've fallen behind, this alone is a game changer. So let's go through a couple testimonials and see what students are saying about this. I'd actually taken an effective learning course before, but after going through week 5, I felt like all of this was completely new to me. Your approach to mind maps makes so much sense, and inquiry-based learning has made me actually want to study, even history, which I never thought I'd say. Thank you, Agatha. Thanks to the 1-month day technique, I caught up an entire week of missed school in a single day. That is from Jasper. The step-by-step goal achievement video was probably the single most useful thing for me. Not that the rest wasn't great. It's like compressing most of the system's knowledge into one video. Wow. And that is from Anita, who is in Poland. And ladies and gentlemen, finally, week 6, next level. So this is where everything locks in, right? Where the real transformation happens. So because here's the thing I want you to understand about this last week, okay? We've spent 5 weeks teaching your child skills. Week 6 isn't about adding more skills. It's about making sure those skills become part of who they are. Mick intentionally keeps some of this under wraps because he wants to really surprise waiting, for your child when they get there. So it's like a big wow factor. So what I can say is that week 6 works on journaling, visualization, the impact of environment on identity, and how to handle limiting beliefs. Because you can't sustain great actions without the right self-image. And this week locks all that in. But what I can tell you is this, ladies and gentlemen, after completing the full system, there is no scenario where your child walks out not knowing how to take effective action. By week 6, these aren't techniques anymore. They're who your child is. And that's the difference between this system and everything else out there. Tutoring teaches your child to pass a test. This system teaches them how to become someone who doesn't need tutoring ever. Wow, we have covered a lot. let's break down the summary and go through everything for the full 6 weeks and what it looks like. So once again, of course, along the way, your child might hit some bumps, right? And that's completely normal. That's why we provide ongoing support so your child can get their questions answered quickly. And we do this in 3 ways. First, your child gets access to a private community of growth-minded teenagers from around the world. Okay? You probably have heard this saying before: you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And for teenagers, that's their parents, and beyond that, their closest friends. So if your child is surrounded by people who'd rather party every weekend, who couldn't care less about school, who have zero ambition for their future, what's going to happen? Your child is going to start doing the same thing, and it's not a character flaw. This is human nature. But thanks to the internet, your child doesn't have to be limited by who happens to sit next to them in class. They can surround themselves with ambitious, driven students from all over the world. So your child won't just learn how to take effective action. They'll actually meet other high-caliber young people and potentially form positive friendships that last a lifetime. Second, your child gets weekly access to live group coaching sessions with a dedicated learning coach from our team. And these are group sessions on purpose. Your child is going to learn not just from their own questions, but from hearing what other students are working through as well, right? It's one of the most powerful parts of the system. And our coach is someone that Mick personally trained using the exact same methodology. So, your child is getting expert guidance every single week from someone operating at Mick's standard. And ladies and gentlemen, third, something I genuinely believe in makes the biggest difference for most students, and that is a one-on-one personal onboarding call with our team. Here's why that matters. Over the years, we've seen one pattern over and over again. The hardest part for any teenager isn't getting through the lessons, it's starting the first week, the first exercise, the moment they actually have to sit down and do the work. And that's where most systems lose students. They buy, they open lesson 1, and then life happens. The system sits there. So we added something specifically to solve this. Before your child watches a single lesson, we get on a call with them individually. We assess exactly where they are right now. We understand their specific challenges, their goals, their situation. We personally want to motivate them. And we map out a personalized path through the system. So from day 1, they're not just following a generic program, they're following their program. Super specific to them. Even the most resistant teenagers, the ones who swear they won't engage, come out of this call excited to start because for the first time, someone who isn't their parent is treating them like an adult, asking them what they actually want and showing them exactly how to get there. So think about that, a complete 6-week system, a growth-focused community, weekly live group coaching, and a personal onboarding call to kickstart the whole experience for your child. So let's talk about the real cost of doing all of this alone. Time. Learning everything I've shared with you today and actually being able to apply it correctly can take 3, 5, maybe 8 years. Or it may never happen at all, right? Because your child gives up from overwhelm and lack of support. Remember Mick's story at the beginning? It took him over 6 years, and he was actively searching for these answers. Most teenagers don't even know where to start. Money. If your child is currently in tutoring, do the math. At around $50 an hour, and honestly, in many places it's much more, twice a week, that's around $5,000 a year. Over the entire high school, I mean, you're looking at $20,000, and that's on the low end. And as we covered today, that money is treating the symptoms, not building the foundation. Without professional guidance and a clear action plan, your child becomes dependent on tutoring. And the moment it stops, they're right back where they started. And mental health. Endless stress, frustration, and unnecessary anxiety. We saw the CDC data earlier today. 40% of students already report persistent sadness and hopelessness. Without the right support, it doesn't get better, it just gets worse. So, the question isn't, can you afford to invest in a system? The question is, can you afford not to? So here's exactly what your child gets when you enroll them today. So first up, the complete 6-week effective action system. Over 40 video lessons structured across 6 progressive modules, everything we talked about today and far more. Every concept, every framework, every tool refined over 5 years with thousands of students. Your child owns this for life, including every future update we release. And this is a value of $1,997. What this means is your child is first going to get the complete 6-week effective action system. And second, the full exercise library and hands-on materials. Every lesson comes with worksheets, cheat sheets, and implementation exercises. This isn't passive watching, it's active building, because the best self-document I showed you earlier, the one students say changed how they see themselves for the first time in their lives, is extremely valuable. We're going to put a price tag of this of $497 on this. So your child gets the complete 6-week system, the full exercise library, and third, lifetime access to the effective action community. And this lifetime access is incredible. It's a private space filled with growth-minded teenagers from around the world. Your child will finally be surrounded by peers who take their future seriously. Because remember, you become who you spend time with. And this is something most families simply can't give their child any other way. That has got a price tag of $997 for a value. And your child is going to get the 6-week system, the exercise library, the lifetime community access, and we're adding something else that is fourth. That is our weekly live group coaching lessons. Every week, your child joins a live call with a coach personally trained by Mick. They get their questions answered, they hear what other students are working through, and stay accountable. And this isn't just for 6 weeks. It runs for as long as your child is part of the community. It is ongoing, and its value is $1,497. So, once again, your child gets the 6-week system, the exercise library, the lifetime community access, weekly live coaching, and fifth, something I genuinely believe makes the biggest difference for most of our students, and that is the one-on-one personal onboarding call. So before your child watches a single lesson, we sit down with them individually. We assess where they are, understand their goals, personally motivate them, and map out a personalized path through the system. Because the hardest part of any course isn't the content, it's starting. And this will make sure that they do, in fact, start. That is a $397 value. So here's everything your child gets all together. The complete 6-week effective action system, $1,997. The full exercise library and materials, $497. Lifetime community access, $997. Weekly live group coaching at $1,497, and a personal one-on-one onboarding call at $397, and your total value is $5,385. Wow, that's a lot. Now, look, I'm not going to charge you $5,385 for this, okay? Even though that's what it genuinely is worth. But before I tell you the actual price, let me ask you a few quick questions. So let's go through this. If all this system did was help your child finally develop the motivation to sit down and study on their own without you asking, without you nagging, without the daily battle, would it be worth it? Thank you for your responses. We appreciate that. If all this did was give your child the self-confidence to believe in themselves again, so they stop saying, I can't do this, and actually start trying, would it be worth it? Go ahead. Drop a yes in the chat if you feel that it would be. Thank you. Another question is, if all this did was save you from spending another $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 on tutoring that doesn't fix the root problem, would this be worth it? And if all this did was give your child real tools to manage stress and anxiety in a world where 40% of teenagers are struggling with their mental health, would it be worth it? Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of yeses coming in on the chat. Thank you all for being honest with yourselves. Here's the thing, guys. This system does all of that. Not one, not two, but all of that. So let me get to the price. Now, I'm not going to charge you the $5,385, okay, that this system is in fact worth. No. Even though, based on everything that we've covered here today, it absolutely is, okay? I'm not going to charge you $2,997 that parents see on our website right now, even though that's the standard price and families enroll at it every single week, okay? I'm not going to charge you the $1,997 that you might reasonably expect given what's included. Okay? So, for everyone on this webinar today, the effective action system is yours for just $997. One-time payment, lifetime access, everything included, the complete 6-week system, the exercise library, the lifetime community access, weekly live group coaching, your personal one-on-one onboarding call, every future update forever. $997, that's it. And I want to be clear about something. This isn't one of those fake discounts, okay? If you go to the website right now, the effective action system is listed at $2,997. That is the standard price. Parents enroll at that price every single week. The $997 offer doesn't exist anywhere on our website. There's no sales page for it. There's really the only way to access it is through the link below this webinar. That's it. Nowhere else. It was built specifically for parents who show up, stay engaged, and are ready to take action for their child. So let me put $997 in perspective for a second, okay? $997 is less than 2 months of tutoring for a system that makes tutoring unnecessary for life. It's less than a single SAT prep course, except that it doesn't prepare your child for one exam. It prepares them for every challenge they'll ever face. And unlike tutoring, where you're paying month after month with no end in sight, this is a one-time investment. Invest once and your child benefits forever. And to completely eliminate any risk, we offer a 30-day action-based guarantee. And here's how it works. So, if your child goes through the system and actually does the work, they will see results, period. But if you're still not convinced, I completely understand. And that's why I built in a simple guarantee so your child can try the system completely risk-free. All we ask is that your child goes through the first 2 weeks, completes the exercises, and shows up at least one live group coaching session. All right, that's it. If after that you decide it's not for them or you are unsatisfied for any reason, we'll refund your entire investment. We include these conditions for one reason only, because what we've seen over and over again is that students who are skeptical at the beginning get hooked once they actually start doing the work. We don't want your child to miss out on the transformation just because they didn't give it a real chance. So you're either getting a system that changes your child's life or you're getting your money back. Either way, you do not lose. Now, I understand that $997 all at once might be a stretch for some families right now, so we've made it easy to spread out the investment. You can choose to pay in 3 monthly installments of $397, same system, same access, same everything, just broken up to make it more comfortable for you. All right? One quick note before we go to Q&A, and this $997 offer isn't something that you're going to find anywhere else. As I said before, it doesn't exist on our website. There's no sales page for it. It was built specifically for parents who show up to this webinar, stay engaged to the end, and are ready to take action for their child. So when the webinar ends, the $997 link closes with it. The only way to enroll after that is through our English language website at the standard $2,997. So, if you've been nodding along today, if you've been recognizing that your child in what we described, and if you know something has to change, don't put this off. Click the button below the webinar and secure your spot right now while the link is still active. Okay, now it is time for some Q&A, and I'm going to start with the questions that come up most often, and then we're going to get to your specific one. So here we go. When my child doesn't want to do it, okay, what happens then? Well, this is a completely fair question, and honestly, it's the one we hear the most. So here's what I want you to understand. We're all on the same team here. Our shared goal is for your child to learn how to take effective action, yours, mine, and your child's, even if they don't realize it yet. From the 1,000+ teenagers Mick and his team have worked for, I can tell you almost none of them were excited at the beginning. Most of them were actually skeptical. Some came in actively resisting, and a few were openly against it, and that's completely normal. They're teenagers after all. Being told by your parents that you need something is practically a guarantee that you'll resist it, right? And honestly, I see this pattern everywhere in my own life, nieces and nephews, friends, kids, neighbors. The moment a parent says, you should do this, it's almost like the teenager's brain is wired to push back. That's just how they're built at that age, right? So if you're watching this and thinking, my child will never agree to this, trust me, I've heard that from almost every parent I know, and it doesn't mean what you think it means. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot that we've learned. There's a massive difference between I don't want to do this and I've gone through it and it doesn't work. The first one is fear and resistance. The second one has never happened. What typically happens is this. In week 1, the exercises are designed to be low pressure and genuinely interesting. We're not asking them to study harder. We're asking them questions like, who are you right now? And who do you want to become? Teenagers are naturally curious about themselves. That curiosity is the hook. By the end of week 1, something shifts. They start to see themselves differently. They start to feel a sense of ownership over their own direction. And that's when the resistance melts, because it's no longer something their parent is making them do, right? It's something they're choosing for themselves. And remember the research we talked about earlier, parental support style is the number one factor in a child's engagement. And that's why the onboarding call is so important. We don't just onboard your child, we guide you exactly on how to introduce the system, how to frame it, and how to support without pushing, because pushing creates resistance. Supporting creates buy-in. So if your child is resistant right now, that's actually normal. It's not a reason to wait. It's the exact reason to start. So that is my answer to that. Now, before we go into Q&A, let me quickly show you what actually happens after you enroll, because I want you to know exactly what to expect. So during checkout, you're going to enter your email address. Once the payment goes through, you're going to receive a link to the same email to book a one-on-one onboarding call with one of our coaches. And from there, you can either forward the booking link to your child so they can pick a time that works for them, or you can choose a time together. Whatever works best for your family, but honestly, letting them book it themselves is a great first exercise in taking ownership. It starts before the system even begins. This call is for your child, and as a parent, you don't need to be there. So, in fact, it's better if you're not actually. This is their first step toward independence. During the call, we'll customize the action plan so your child's specific needs and show them exactly how to get started with the system. We'll clear up any questions from that call with a clear plan in their head and the confidence to start. All right, thank you so much for staying with me this far. As I promised, here are your slides. To download the presentation, head over to effectiveactionsystems.com/slides. It's there on your screen, and you're going to find all the slides there. And Maria just let me know that she's also added the best self document we talked about earlier. Thanks again, Maria, for doing that. If anyone has any trouble downloading, or if something isn't working, by the way, don't worry about that at all. After the webinar, I'm going to sit down and send you an email with a direct link to the materials. Oh, and I see that Maria has dropped the link in the chat as well, so thank you, Maria. You can simply click that link in the chat, and that will take you straight to the download page. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a long time. We want to thank you once again for showing up. We're going to get through some questions and answers right now. We're going to move into that. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to be answering your questions. So if you got a question, drop it in the chat on the right side of your screen, and I'll do my best to get through as many as I can. I've got one here from Monica. Thank you, Monica, for dropping this in. What are the alternatives to tutoring? Well, this is a good question, Monica, because it really comes down to understanding why your child needs tutoring in the first place, and then solving the root problem. It's not the symptom. Most of the time, the student doesn't know how to study effectively. They can't focus independently, or they can't get themselves to take the action consistently. So the best alternative isn't another form of tutoring. It's building the core skills we talked about today. Independent learning, focus, internal motivation. So that external support simply isn't needed anymore. And here's the critical difference, by the way, between the two approaches. When you take the tutoring away, your child's results will drop. They go right back where they started from, right? And when a child actually builds effective action skills, you can't take them away. They stay, they compound. Your child is going to keep getting better even after the program ends. So because they didn't just receive help, they acquired skills that permanently changed how they operate. That is the alternative, not more support, better skills. I hope that answers your question, Monica. Let's keep it going. Jamie, are you a parent yourself? Well, honestly, that is a fair question, and I want to answer it directly. No, I don't have children of my own, but I am surrounded by teenagers in my life, nieces and nephews, friends, kids in my neighborhood. You know, I've watched these exact patterns play out over and over again, and I want to be transparent about something. I'm not the expert in this system. Once again, Mick is, right? He's the one who spent 5+ years building this, working through thousands of teenagers, refining every single piece of what you're going to get. So my role is basically just to bring his work to English-speaking families. So when you enroll your child, you're not getting my expertise, you're getting his. I'm just the person making sure it lands clearly for you and you understand everything. But to answer your actual question, yes, I see this stuff every day, and that's actually why I said yes when Mick asked me to help bring it to the English-speaking world. Any more questions here? Let's see. All right, Maria. Hey, Maria. She says, this all sounds great, but how do I actually get my child to study regularly? And this is a great question. Honestly, this is one of the most important things that we're going to talk about today. So let me take my time with it, okay? Here's what we know about teenagers, and I'm sure you've experienced this firsthand. If you tell your child you need to study, it almost never works. They need to see for themselves why this matters, what it could do for them, and sometimes they need to feel the consequences of not doing it. So what you definitely should do, or what you definitely should not do, is stand over them and supervise. I know that that is very tempting. I know it feels like the responsible thing to do, but here's the paradox. The moment you stop hovering, the moment your child sees that you're the ones responsible for their own results, that's when real change happens. Now, in the beginning, it might actually get worse when you step back. They might bring home a few bad grades, right? And they might forget an assignment. They might drop the ball on something. But as long as the consequence isn't failing the year or missing a critical university deadline, nothing truly bad will happen. It will be uncomfortable for a few days, maybe a couple of weeks, but then everything, is going to be turning to something that's really remarkable, right? It starts to happen. Your child becomes significantly more responsible. They start owning their decisions. They start answering to themselves instead of to you. And that is the moment when they feel that ownership, where you can start suggesting changes, not demanding, suggesting. Big difference. Things like planning their studying in advance, and because they know you're not forcing it on them, because you're suggesting, not insisting, and because you genuinely don't seem bothered whether they take your advice or not, that's when they actually start listening. The process looks different for every teenager. For some, the shift happens in days. For others, it takes a few weeks, but it consistently leads to the same place: a more independent, more responsible young person. And by the way, this is exactly how it works with the effective action system, too. If you enroll your child and say, you have to do this course, most teenagers will resist. They'll get to it eventually, but we'd rather speed that process up and help them get there faster. So what works best is saying something like, hey, I got you access to something called the Effective Action System. Here's what it covers and what you're going to learn from it. Explain it to them, and then give them the freedom to approach it on their own terms. Teenagers hate being forced into things, but deep down they're grateful for their parents' support. So instead of imposing, inspire. Instead of yelling, explain. Instead of restricting, raise their awareness. When you do this, your child develops internal motivation, and internal motivation makes every goal infinitely easier to achieve. And one more thing, remember, access is for life, right? The system is constantly being updated and improved, so even if your child doesn't start right away, even if they come back to it in a few weeks, nothing is lost. In fact, it's far better to wait a little than to force them into it when they don't see the point, right? The system will be there when they are ready. So I hope that answers your question, Maria. I went a little deeper on that one because it's generally one of the most important topics for parents to understand. So now I can see that quite a few people have joined in the last few minutes. On our website, this is a $2,997 offer, but for everyone on this webinar, it's just $997. So if you want to secure your child's spot at this price, click the button below this webinar and enroll them right now. All right. Marcus. Hey, Marcus. Marcus says, is payment plans available? Absolutely, Marcus. If $997 all at once does not work for you right now, you can choose the split it into 3 monthly payment option for $397 each. As I mentioned earlier, same system, same access, same everything, just spread it out over 3 months. Simply click the button below this webinar. You're going to see two options. There's a one-time payment of $9.97 or 3 monthly payments of $3.97. Click whichever works best for your family, and you'll be taken straight to the secure checkout page. All right. Andrew asks, do I have to buy access right now? Andrew, no, of course not. If you'd prefer to wait, that's completely fine. The system doesn't disappear after this webinar. You'll still be able to get access later. However, after this webinar, the only way to enroll will be through our website at the standard price, $2,997. So if you want to take advantage of the $997 offer and save $2,000, it's best to secure your child's spot now. Is the system fully in English? Yes. Everything is in English, all the video lessons, all the exercises, all the materials, the community, the coaching sessions, everything. The system was originally built in Polish for our students in Poland, but we rebuilt it from the ground up in English specifically for this launch. So your child won't encounter any language barriers. And actually, we've had students in Poland whose parents specifically wanted them to go through the English version to improve their English skills at the same time. So if your child is bilingual or learning English, that is an added bonus. Patricia asks, how do you build a habit of studying regularly? Well, this is a really good question because the most important thing is to not set the bar too high at the beginning, right? Meaning, don't plan to study 3 hours a day when you haven't been studying regularly at all. That's a recipe for burnout by day 3. Start much smaller, 30 minutes a day, maybe 45, and ideally do it right after school. That works best for about 80% of students. This connects to the concept of chronotypes that I touched on earlier, but I won't go too deep into that right now. Here's the key number. Research shows it takes roughly 66 days to form a habit. After that point, it becomes easier to study than not to study. But during those 66 days, your child needs to push through even on the days they don't feel like it. Even on the bad days, that's the critical window. And there are specific strategies that make this much easier. Things like planning in detail exactly what you're going to study for before you sit down, optimizing your environment, creating what we call a distraction register. So writing down everything that pulls your attention so that you can eliminate it, or setting a ridiculously small starting goal to trick your brain into getting started. Because once you start, momentum will take over. We teach all of this in detail inside the system, and I hope that that answers your question, Patricia. Let us keep going. We've got a few more here. Joanna asks, how do your methods work for children with ADHD? Okay, really glad that you asked this, Joanna. We are very aware that neurodivergent students may want to join the system, and we specifically accounted for that when building it. So what that means in practice, in short, engaging lessons. That's how we handle that. Each focused on one specific topic. So no hour-long lectures, no information overload. Every lesson gives clear examples and step-by-step instructions on exactly what the student should do to practice what they've just learned. And the videos are created in a modern, engaging format designed specifically for teenagers who, let's be honest, whether they have ADHD or not, generally have a limited attention span these days. We made sure that even students with significant concentration challenges can get through the entire program without feeling overwhelmed. On top of that, the private community provides a safe, supportive space where every student can ask questions and get help quickly. And the weekly live group coaching sessions, by the way, give students the opportunity to get real-time guidance and support, which is especially valuable for neurodivergent learners who benefit from that direct interaction. So we've worked with students with ADHD and other learning differences before, and the results have been quite remarkable, actually. The structure, the short lessons, the accountability from the community and the coaching, it's actually an environment where neurodivergent students often thrive because the system provides exactly the kind of external structure they need. So to answer your question directly, yes, the system absolutely works for neurodivergent students. And we love all your questions coming in. Well, I really appreciate that. And we've got one from Eva. Eva asks, can I pay now and have my daughter start later? She won't have time in the next few days. Well, that is a good question as well, Eva. Thank you for that. Absolutely. There's no rush to start. Remember, access is for life. So even if she starts in a month or 3 months, she'll still have full access to everything, including all future updates. And I want to emphasize that the system is continuously being updated. So when we see that many students are asking about the same thing, our team will create a new lesson on that topic or improve an existing one. So the longer you have access, the more valuable it becomes. My child already gets good grades. Would this still help them? Yes, absolutely. And I'd actually argue this is where the system comes even more valuable for you. Because think about it this way. A student who's getting good grades through sheer effort, cramming, late nights, stress, is working hard but working inefficiently, right? They're getting the results, but at what cost? Their mental health, their sleep, their free time, their happiness. The effective action system doesn't just improve grades, it changes how your child operates. A good student becomes a great student who achieves the same results in half the time and actually enjoys the process. So if you remember Victor, he wasn't failing, he was a normal student and ended up scoring 96% in math and 100% in English on his final exams while sleeping 8 hours a night and having time for his hobbies. So if your child is already doing well, imagine what they could do with an actual system behind them. Another question, does this work for students outside the U.S. or in different school systems? Yes, and this is actually one of the most important things to understand about the system. Effective action skills are universal. I mentioned this before, planning, building habits, managing time, studying effectively, building confidence. None of this changes based on which country you're in or what curriculum your school follows. So a teenager in London faces the same motivation challenges as a teenager in Toronto or Sydney or Berlin. Procrastination doesn't care about your school system. Phone addiction doesn't check which country you live in, right? The system was originally built and proven in Poland, a completely different educational system than the US, UK, or anywhere else, and it worked because we're not teaching students how to pass a specific exam, we're teaching them how to operate effectively as human beings. So whether your child is in a public school in Texas, an international school in Dubai, or being homeschooled in Australia, the skills are exactly the same and the results will be too. All right. One more little drink here. Because I've been talking a lot, I'm getting a little rough on the throat, but Camilla pipes in and says, my daughter can't study on her own. Is this a system for her? Well, that's a great question, Camilla. If your daughter can't study independently, then this system is especially for her because it's exactly what it's designed to fix. By the end, she'll know how to learn effectively on her own without torturing, without constant help from others, right? So inside the system, we start from the absolute basics of effective learning and gradually build to more advanced levels. We combine theory with a lot of hands-on practice. One of the 6 weeks, where roughly 2.5 to 3 are dedicated specifically to effective learning skills. And everything is designed so that any student can follow along regardless of where they're starting from, even if your daughter has never studied independently a single day in her life. This system will meet her where she is. So To answer your question directly, Camilla, yes, this will absolutely help your daughter learn to study on her own. I can see we're starting to run low on time here, and I want to get through a few more questions here from, firstly, Helen, who asks, is this program only for high school students? Helen, the answer is no, not at all. The system is designed for students aged 12 and up, whether they're in high school, middle school, already in college. All the material is created in a way that is engaging and accessible for young people across their entire range. Someone just asked, why is the minimum age 12? Well, because younger students may not yet be mature enough to fully absorb the concepts and implement the changes on their own. From our experience, working with over 1,000 students, 12 is the right lower boundary, right? Most 12-year-olds are already capable of going through the entire system, engaging independently, and seeing genuinely positive changes in their lives. So, look, guys, I see that we're running short on time, but let's go for a few more here. Let's get through Jake, who says, how much time does the system take each week? Going through the system takes roughly 3 to 4 hours per week, and that's over a 6-week period. Ideally, that's going to break down to about an hour 3 times a week, or 45 minutes 4 times a week. Of course, your child can go at a slower pace. It'll just take a bit longer to complete. In practice, each week includes about an hour and a half of video lessons and about an hour and a half of exercises and hands-on materials, so your child can immediately apply everything that they've learned. From Mark, how long are the videos on average? Each video is about 10 to 15 minutes. We intentionally keep them short because we want the students with concentration challenges to get the most out of every single lesson. And we actually received a lot of feedback early on that longer videos were just too hard to get through. So in our current version, we broke everything into shorter, focused segments, and we've seen that this significantly boosts motivation. When a student finishes 3 10-minute lessons instead of 1 30-minute lecture, they feel like they've really accomplished more, and that momentum keeps things going. Does this work for college students too? Absolutely. I mentioned this earlier. College students get a huge amount out of this system. There's significantly more studying in college than in high school, obviously, so the advanced learning techniques we teach in week 5 becomes especially valuable. And the system will save your child not only a massive amount of time, but a massive amount of stress too. I can promise you that. Honestly, when I think about my time at university, I would have given anything to have the knowledge that's inside this system. All right, guys, so we've got time for one final question before we close this up. Monica asks, can you really cancel and get a refund? Yes, you can. The system comes with a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. We want to make sure that every student who joins is completely satisfied. So to use the guarantee, your child simply needs to complete the first 2 weeks, do the exercises, and attend at least one live group coaching session, and that's it. It's a very low bar to meet, but we require it because we want every student to at least give it a real try before deciding. Because, what we've seen over and over again is that students who are skeptical at the beginning get hooked once they actually start going through the work and doing it, and, they want to keep going. So it's just a great process there. By the way, this is all outlined in our terms of service. So once those conditions are met, we will fully honor the obligated issue of a complete refund. No worries about that. I hope that answers your question, Monica, and I hope I've answered everyone else's questions too. We are running low on time, so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying with me until the end. I really appreciate it. So guys, this is your last chance to get the effective action system at the launch price. On our website, the system is listed at $29.97. For everyone on this webinar, it's just $9.97 or 3 payments of $3.97. Once this webinar ends, this link will be gone. It won't be available tomorrow. It won't be available later today. The moment we wrap up, the offer closes, and the only way to access the system will be through our website at the full price. So if you want to secure your child's spot with lifetime access, the community, weekly coaching, and the personal onboarding call, click the button below this webinar right now. All right, guys, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something here, okay? A lot of parents hope that problems will just resolve themselves, that their child will figure it out on their own, that somehow things will work out. So they do nothing, and the problems stay exactly where they are. There's a famous quote by Bodhi Sanders, "Not making a decision is also making a decision." And this isn't even about the effective action system specifically. Whether it's this or something else entirely, that really doesn't matter. What matters is having the courage to take the first step toward change. You, as an adult, are fully responsible for your own life, and if you don't take that first step, nobody is going to take it for you. Now, do you remember Mick's story from the beginning? If his parents hadn't taken that first step so many years ago, if they hadn't bought him that coding course, he probably would not have finished university. He would have ended up in some dead-end job, spending his whole life frustrated, wondering why everyone else seemed to have it better. But they did take that step, and that one decision changed his life forever. And the reason I'm telling you this is right now, at the end of our time together here, is because you're in the same position Mick's parents were in once, right? So one decision, that's all it takes. It's often those seemingly small decisions that lead to enormous results down the road. So I want you to think about your one decision today and what it could mean for your child's future. Imagine in a few weeks your child comes home from school and actually sits down to study without you asking, without the daily battle. In a few weeks, they wake up in the morning and feel genuinely excited about their day. In a few weeks, they wake up to a new hobby because they finally have time to combine school and responsibilities with the things they actually care about. In a few weeks, they're simply happier, and they thank you for it because it was your decision that gave them access to the tools that changed their life forever. The worst case scenario, your child tries the system, decides it's not for them, and you get a full refund. Zero risk. The best case, your lives change forever. So I'd like to leave you with one final quote, and that is, your life does not change and that is, your life does not get better by chance, it gets better by change. From Jim Rohn. Thank you for being here today. I wish you and your family all the best, and I genuinely hope to see your child inside the system soon. Take care, everyone.